Good afternoon, Bermuda. This is Aaron Hill of Generation Next. Here I have with me Mr. Michael MacLean, Principal of the Allied Trust and Allied Partners Development Limited. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. Aaron, how are you?
Bermuda, you may remember Mr. MacLean from the Waterfront Development matter a few months ago. Took precedence. It's been over the past few years. It's been in the papers. We've seen the battle, the protracted legal battle that Mr. MacLean and his partners and the trust have had with the former administration, the One Bermuda Alliance administration. And correct me if I'm wrong, you held the lease for the Waterfront Development, and the One Bermuda Alliance sought and successfully revoked that lease through retroactive legislation in Parliament. Is that correct?
That is correct. We signed a lease after some time of negotiations with the Corporation of Hamilton to develop the waterfront. There was also a development agreement which was contested as well in the proceedings at I guess the value or how it affected the lease. That was also voted in the House of Assembly as well.
And so where are we at now? We've had an election. The Progressive Labour Party championed a great deal of their election on some of the things that the One Bermuda Alliance had done or had not done during the administration. One of those things being the attacks on black-owned businesses. Where are we at now? We're 3 months into a Progressive Labour Party government. Where are we at? Have you seen any significant progress since the general election to now? Where are we?
Not much has changed really. To my surprise, after the various comments and what I thought was support from the Progressive Labour Party, the litigation that I was embroiled in with the OBA government continues on with the same attorneys, which is even more shocking, but it's continued on and it's reached a point where the government is actually seeking to end the arbitration proceedings, which could mean that they would have avoided my contracts and rights to the development I had, and I'm basically getting nothing for all the hard work that I put in with my team.
And so for those Bermudians who don't know, maybe some younger Bermudians my age and the like, you owned a construction company, didn't you?
Yep. I had a group of companies actually that I managed and owned. It's a family-owned business, and I started them in the year 2000. I grew, a two-man venture from my former employer to maybe 120 staff at sort of the height of the company, and that's when these leases were signed, actually.
And a great deal of those staff were Bermudians, weren't they?
Oh, a significant amount of them were Bermudians, yes.
And so, as it stands today, you no longer have that business. You no longer employ these Bermudians, and that is a direct result of this debacle, protracted legal battle what started under the One Bermuda Alliance, which led to retroactive legislation, and now we're still in the middle of an arbitration, possible legal proceedings after that, are we?
That's correct. I mean, while business was what it was then, after these contracts were signed, we came under, all sorts of difficulties and challenges with court, and we spend, I guess, more than we had as a business to try to, hold our position with the government, and we're 3.5 years into this legal battle, and it's sort of eroded. Well, not sort of, it has eroded all of my wealth and all of the business's earnings.
Mm-hmm. And this has had significant impact on you personally, your family, and the like, not just the business.
Again, that's significant. I mean, my family, as it being a family-owned business, they're affected by everything I'm affected by, and I have 2 young kids, 3 actually, no, sorry, 3 young kids, and the ones that I already not fully understand what I've gone through, and it's not a nice ordeal to have your government, for the sake of a better word, do the things that they've done to me with no regard, in my opinion, because there hasn't been from the beginning a sort of a fair position that the government's taken with me to try to resolve this matter. Never.
Now, there are a number of reasons why members of the public may pontificate as to what was the impetus behind revoking the contract from you, taking your development rights away, trying to, bring it back in. But, some may argue that there's a racial turn to it, that, no way that we're going to allow Mike MacLean, a young black businessman, to have control over this valuable asset, despite it having been awarded through due process, despite it having been awarded correctly, despite you being the legal owner of it. But what has been the position, and we've discussed this, was it ever the case that you were approached by members of the Progressive Labour Party to see if a deal could be worked out? Did you have discussions prior to the election? Because I know that you stated that currently you feel as if though the Progressive Labour Party isn't advancing the position as it should. Now, is that coming as a surprise to you as a result of previous discussions?
Oh, definitely, Aaron, because through the whole ordeal with the OBA, the Progressive Labour Party used my experience as I guess political ammunition against the OBA. Some of the information that that was taken, a good deal of it was taken to the House of Assembly, was I guess gotten from myself or from my office and taken to the House of Assembly and used against the OBA government. And I thought when the PLP came into power, at the very least, we would be able to sit around a table and negotiate. I've never maintained to anyone that I want this or I want that or I have to have this or I have to have that. My position has always been an amicable solution that can resolve this for the best interest of me and the best interest of the country. And it surprises me that former opposition members, if we can we can use that word, took one position prior to being elected, and now it's 360 degrees or 180 depending on how you look at it. Their position has changed. I see you started to peruse the Hansard, which I take it we'll touch on later. But there's numerous conversations that I had between me and, in particular, the opposition leader. Well, the then opposition leader, the deputy, who is now the premier, and also the minister responsible for municipalities, which is the one I've written numerous documents or numerous letters to, and I'm sure we'll get into that as well later on how this could be resolved. And frankly, I've been writing since they were elected, and I haven't had one response to any of my letters. And I've also had numerous people come to me and say, that this conversation happened between them. I followed up in writing to say, this was mentioned to me, that this could be a way forward. I've done that, and we could be more specific later on, but I haven't heard one thing back from the government yet in writing besides a text message from the premier saying that this is the best thing for me, that the government end this arbitration proceedings, and I get nothing.
So you mentioned that you met with certain individuals which were in the then opposition, now the Premier, the Honourable David Burt, JP MP. And so who else? So people met at your office, that's correct? Yeah. And so would the Premier, now Premier, would have been one of those individuals that met at your office?
Definitely, yes.
And the Minister responsible for municipalities, is that Mr. Walton Brown?
Yes. He never came to my office. We met at Bocce.
And what would your discussions with respect to the minister who is now responsible for municipalities being at that time?
Well, his position, just like the premier, it's an absolute shocker to me, because while he was in opposition, he came to me and asked me to facilitate or broker, if you want to call it that, a settlement between myself and the OBA government. And it took me by surprise, because he's a member of the opposition. I hear him in the House of Assembly, and I think, well, how is he actually going to be able to approach the OBA and resolve this matter for me? He's on the other side of the fence. So I said, well, look, it's better than going to court and spending all this money. If he could get it done, I'll take him for a work. What is it going to cost me? So we had some discussions. We obviously hashed the point out about him being in the opposition and his parliamentary, I guess, restrictions or the rest. And I'm a businessman, commercial minded. I said, well, look, I'm the type of person that believes and firmly believes, and anybody that knows me well enough will tell you that if you work for something, you deserve it. So he's no different from me or anybody else. If he was to get the deal resolved for me, then hey, I think he'll be entitled to. Now, that's up to him whether or not he accepts or doesn't accept, because he's the one with the parliamentary responsibilities.
That's where the issue for me arises, is that we have a member of the opposition. He's a member of parliament. He's not a lawyer, is he?
No.
And so you're not instructing him in a legal capacity,
No.
which would be separate from his parliamentary capacity. So the only interest that he would have, the only kind of benefit that he would have to position that would put him in a position or an advantage is that he's a member of parliament.
Yep.
And so essentially he would be using his membership of parliament to broker a deal for a matter that was previously before parliament.
Yes.
Because the retroactive legislation, if I'm correct, went before parliament. I think it's in 2013. And coincidentally, the only member absent from those from that debate was the minister responsible, Mr. Brown. And so particularly Bermuda, as far as young people are concerned, we have an interest in ensuring that our leaders are held responsible. Our leaders are held accountable for their actions without fear or favor. We can be a part of the same political party. We can be a part of the same team. We can accept that certain ideals should be advanced, but we must keep the best interests of Bermudians at heart. And we cannot abuse power. Now, you may find differently, and it's a matter for each and every individual out there to be able to assess the facts and deduce for themselves what they decide. But in my mind, it is grossly inappropriate for any member of parliament to accept or negotiate on behalf of any matter that is before parliament without, the very least, declaring their interest before parliament, especially when the matter at hand had just previously been in parliament.
And let me clarify, Aaron, because I just want to make sure that the listening audience understands this. Walton Brown approached me.
Sure.
He called me and asked me. I didn't solicit him or ask him or anybody else, because I didn't know him.
Which, as I progress, Mr. MacLean, it's like, now the same minister who had approached you and asked to negotiate a settlement is now the minister responsible for dealing with the matter that's still before the courts, still before arbitration.
So if he believed, again, and I hope this is the train of thought that you get, if he believed that I deserve compensation then, and he was willing to do it for a fee, then he's the minister now instructing a permanent secretary or an attorney to essentially cut my rights or my ability to get compensation off entirely.
Absolutely. What I'm saying is, first, he's wrong for not declaring the interest for approaching you. He's wrong for approaching you. Secondly, he's wrong for not declaring his interest in approaching you. Furthermore, the second point is that he's now the minister responsible. That should never happen. That should never happen. That is a conflict from the start. Because even if he does, on merit, support your position, what is that going to look like? That a member of parliament has approached you. You haven't approached him. He's approached you and said, listen, I believe you've been done wrong. I'm going to try to work out a deal for you, but I actually need some funds for that. And now he's the minister responsible. Now, if he does one of two things, if he goes in his ministerial position now and he accepts that he's going to push this matter through, do what he told you, that, hey, look, this is wrong, and right the wrongs that have been done to you, perception is reality. And so for a great deal of Bermuda, that will be unacceptable. It's placed the government, it's placed the people of this country who have entrusted this progressive Labour Party government, it's placed that trust in jeopardy. Because now, he's done the opposite. The same man who's come to you and said, well, listen, I'm prepared to broker a deal for you. Now, by what stretch of the imagination he could do that, why he thought that he could do that, I don't know. Only he would know, and that's something that he's going to have to answer, not to me, not to you, but to the people of Bermuda.
And imagine how I feel, where election comes, PLP win, and I think they're fully supportive of me and how what the OBA has done. They're gonna, they've made all sorts of commitments verbally that they would right the wrong, or made speeches. I wouldn't say commitment, but made speeches that they were going to right the wrong. And then I found out Well, Brown is the minister, and he obviously came to me at that time, so I figured, okay, well, this is a straight run. Obviously, he's the minister now. There's no way, that I could remunerate him, but at the same time, they're going to do what's right quite easily, or they would easily do what's right. And then it's a completely different tack now from the members that can do something about it. I've obviously spoken to some of the backbenchers, and they feel that this is a problem, but they don't have the power to do anything because they're not in cabinet and they don't have ministerial positions.
And from your point of view, not just the fact that these individuals had approached you, that you had discussed with them in private at your office various discussions regarding this matter, notwithstanding the fact that you provided them with information. Separately, unbeknownst to you, in Parliament, whilst the retroactive legislation was being placed before Parliament, these very same individuals, save for Mr. Brown, who was absent from the parliamentary session on this day, had advocated with your position that what the One Bermuda Alliance had done was wrong. And we have in front of us the Hansard here. And
let me clarify that.
Sure.
We met prior and after those parliamentary debates, because some of the information that's in those parliamentary debates was provided by me, and prior to these. I mean, there's things that broke about and I'll say this carefully, but things that broke about Jetgate and other things like that, for an example,
with other ministers.
that specifically came out of my office. And the gentleman that I mentioned in my affidavits in court that was liaising with the OBA provided all of this information to me and those individuals at my office to go back to the House of Parliament and said what they said or debated about it in the House of Assembly through stones, as it were. Let me use the word, that phrase, through stones at the OBA. I provided them that information through my office, and now again I'm thinking, okay, well, I've helped them along. The least they're going to do is right the wrong for me, not do me any favors, but keep their word.
And I just have the Hansard from the 2nd of October 2013 in front of us, where the Honourable Premier David Burt, JP MP, one of the quotes that he says during his speech, and this was a lengthy debate on the 2nd of October, nearly 4 years ago now, where he says, when discussing the how essentially this legislation is going to rip the lease from right under you, take away your vote, which to the minds of many Bermudians takes us back to a time which we would like to forget. Which would like to take us back to a time which many of us would like to forget.
Yeah.
But some of us are not prepared to forget it. And this reminds us of those actions. And the then opposition leader, or then deputy opposition leader, and now Premier, states in the House of Assembly that this is a backhanded, it's underhanded, it's sly. Nobody knows it. This legislation was never discussed at any point during the election campaign. It was never discussed at any point in the throne speech. Nothing at all, and just thrown at us at the last minute. So what will we say? It appears that the One Bermuda Alliance have returned to their roots, and those are the roots of the United Bermuda Party and Bermuda's dark past. Political enemies of the 40 Thieves had their mortgages called, their property rights infringed, much of the same way which we are seeing done in this bill.
That sounds familiar. Very familiar in my case.
Mr. Speaker, they are using political power to change rules. They are using political power to put the establishment back in control. They may have the votes in the House, but they do not have the moral high road on this issue. It is wrong, and we do not support it. Again, those are the words of the then Deputy Opposition Leader and our now Premier, the Honourable David Burt, JP MP. And the then Deputy Opposition Leader, our Premier today, essentially said, listen, it was wrong. He and his party do not support it. And we notice when we look at the votes in the Hansard from the 2nd of October 2013 that every Progressive Labour Party member present in the House on that date voted against this legislation, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Obviously, we know that the legislation passed because the government had the votes, the majority of votes in the House. But the language used on this date in opposition to this legislation, in opposition to what was being done, this retroactive voiding of your lease, is unequivocal. They don't support it. It was wrong. It reminds them of the 40 Thieves and putting the establishment back in power. It reminds them of when mortgages were pulled. And so it begs the question, what is the difference now? Why the change of position?
Yeah, what has changed since they were in opposition to now they're the government? Why this complete turnaround, 180, 360 turnaround to them supporting me then